This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning, and we take a look at the political pieces we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 16th of April 2020, and I am DM.
I'm Tom.
And I am GK, and in case you missed the headlines, here they are. In the Daily Nation, IMF sees bright future for Kenya after virus gloom. In the Standard, Raila meeting stirs talk of new alliances. And in the Star, 146 MPs support Ruto as DP plots Jubilee takeover.
Yes.
Right, a mouthful there.
Yeah.
Can we begin with the Standard?
Yes.
There's a meeting and new alliances.
A meeting, yes. The Standard is still on the infamous lunch that Atwoli, Easter lunch that Atwoli held for some leaders at his house.
Yeah.
And it's reporting three things that Atwoli has told us.
Yeah.
It's about the attendance, the agenda, and the intention.
Yes.
So Atwoli has said that the leaders who were present represent their tribal blocks.
Yes.
Raila was there for the Luyos, escorted by Orengo.
Yeah.
Murathe was there representing the president for the Kikuyus. Eugene Wamalwa for the Luyas. And Nick Salat sent his apologies on behalf of the Kalenjins, but he was supposed to be there.
Yeah.
So there was no representative for the Kalenjin.
I'm only reporting Atwoli's... No, yes, there wasn't a representative for the Kalenjin, but Atwoli did console the Kalenjins by saying that he himself is a life member of KANU.
Yeah.
And perhaps even Gideon was supposed to be there.
Yeah.
So BBI was on the agenda. And Atwoli said this, and I quote, "We will witness a radical realignment that will see Uhuru remaining in leadership, but not necessarily as president."
Yeah.
So that is the intention.
I mean, it seems this had the blessings of an office very high up, because by the time you're going against the curfew borders,
containment, they're not supposed to be crossing.
And yet they found themselves in Kajiado, you know.
Not only that, but I think it demonstrates the power that Atwoli holds at this moment. This is somebody that we should be listening to. I mean, he's usually full of theatrics.
Yeah.
And when he he's one of those people who he processes his ideas and they come straight out of his mouth, no filter. So he says what other people are thinking and are not brave enough to say. So he's making a lot of revelations. But I think behind this looking like he's spilling the beans and watching the plan, I think he is actually a smart man with a facade of buffoonery, but in the back, he's a sharp schemer.
And I think also history tells us that politics in Kenya is always about alliances and these coalitions. So did we think that this particular one as it stands was going to last into the next election? No. Good headline.
Good point.
So we have a three-part criteria that we're going to use to judge the headlines. We're going to ask ourselves, is it topical or speculative? Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? And is it thoughtful or just plain lazy? So next, if we can look at the Star.
Yes.
And the Star says that
that there are 146 MPs supporting Ruto as a DP plots Jubilee takeover.
Interesting.
I don't know who they interviewed, but look, there has been a move by Jubilee to sign new members, to appoint new members of the National Management Committee of the Jubilee Party. And William Ruto wrote a letter to the Registrar of Parties saying that this move was illegal. And thereafter, subsequently, there was a petition by 146 MPs and senators saying that that move was illegal. Here, the Star is telling us that they want the president to call quickly for a National Executive Committee meeting where they will plan for, what do they call it? Elections, party elections.
Over Skype? Or?
I don't know whether they'll do it past the corona or curfew period.
Yes.
But here's the thing as well. You see, if this is true, then Jubilee members think that Jubilee is like a publicly listed company at the Nairobi Stock Exchange, where they can buy shares as they wish and at whatever price, and then they will become owners or shareholders. But look, the essence of it is this: Jubilee, in my view, and I'm going to sound a little bit crazy, is family property. And if it's family property, then they don't want outsiders to be part.
IPOs.
They don't want IPOs. They will not issue an IPO to have earthlings take over the party, you know. And therefore, I think what Murathe and Co are telling them is, please know your place.
Yeah.
And anyway, if you have 146 MPs, I want to give an example of the Waitito ouster, Waitito impeachment. You see, we thought that Waitito would be protected by the Tanga guys, the Ruto allies. But when push came to shove, Waitito was blasted out with, with absolutely no mercy.
Yeah, the system was done with him.
Yeah, so I would not, I think 146 MPs, I think Ruto's guys are calling Uhuru's bluff. Let's see what happens.
But I think it's an unfair headline anyway. Because Ruto is not on the offensive.
Yeah,
he's on the defense.
Yeah.
He's saying, look, you can't reconfigure a party which is jointly ours without involving us. That's,
Yeah, but you see, I think the Star has a new owner. There's a reason why they're saying DP plots Jubilee takeover. He wants to seem like he's on the offensive. I will not tell you who the new owner is.
I think you already have. Anyway, DP perhaps should not ignore the ugly facts. If we're saying Jubilee has its owners, understand that maybe it's somebody else's game.
Yes.
What do we say about that headline? Do we keep it? Do we toss it?
I think we should keep it. I mean,
keep it for now?
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at the Daily Nation. In the Daily Nation, IMF has made a prediction, and the prediction is positive. It is good. And it sees a bright future for Kenya.
Great.
And it's basically saying that this year, given the pandemic, Kenya will probably have a 1% growth this year, which is far less than it had predicted before.
Right.
But it's saying that as soon as Kenya is, as soon as we're behind the pandemic, next year we should be having growth levels of about 6.1% next year.
Yeah.
So interesting. I mean, we already see that Kenya didn't qualify to have its interest waiver.
Yes.
Given because it was classified as a low-income country.
Yeah.
So it will continue to pay interest on its debts.
Yes.
But this is, I guess, the price you pay for being lower middle income. You play with the big boys, you have to play by those rules.
Absolutely.
But I think, you know what, I think the economies will bounce back.
Yeah.
How quickly maybe there is what is up for debate.
Yes.
And my honest opinion is that as soon as Kenya is able to ease the lockdown, that is exactly what it should do.
Yes.
So that we can get the economy
Yes.
going again.
Yeah.
So what do we say about the three headlines? Who do we keep? Who do we toss?
I like that one for IMF. I like the one for IMF because it gives us hope.
Yep.
But I want to see a big fight.
Yeah, so therefore
we give the Star?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
It's a good jolting one.
Yes, it's very intriguing.
Yeah.
The Star gives us our winning headline.
Yes.
Onto the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country,
Yeah.
where we also have a three-part criteria that we use. We ask ourselves, is it humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy?
Yes, and Daily Nation, you have Ndula. And there you have caricature of the Donald himself, Donald J. Trump. And he's on the ring. And he's trying to save beaten up WHO, and he's also trying to cut his hand while trying to reach out to WHO. And the caption there is Trump and the World Health Organization. And I think this is in the context of Trump cut funding to WHO, I think to a tune of about $500 million. Yeah, $500 million US.
Yeah.
And yes, he's trying to save WHO, but at the same time cutting the hand that feeds it.
Yeah, he also is trying to Trump tried to bring back WWE, the wrestling show, but without the audience.
Yeah, so this is a very good play on Ndula's part.
He deemed it as an essential
service in Florida.
Yeah, that was quite funny.
And I think what Trump is also doing is he's distracting people from the way his administration has dealt with the pandemic and the many deaths that have resulted in America. But it's also showing us the vicious cycle. I mean, cutting funding to WHO only makes them struggle more.
Yeah, and affects the whole world in a very big way.
And affects the whole world. And by saying also that he's cutting his own hand, it's also going to affect Trump as well.
As the election looms in November.
Exactly.
I actually think it's going to help him. This is a diversion from
knowing how Middle America votes, I don't doubt it.
Yeah.
So, in the Star?
The Star, you have the late, and it's a tribute to Ken Walibora, professor of Kiswahili, a former Nation Group head of Kiswahili, and also an assistant professor in the African languages at Riara University. Yes, he died, yesterday or the day before. And what the Ozone is telling us is Siku Njema. And Siku Njema is a book I believe
That
Ken
he
Walibora wrote. Yes.
Yeah.
And,
I like how he's used, it's a matatu that hit him.
yeah.
And the matatu is in the form of an eraser
Yes.
and has rubbed off the word njema.
Njema.
It's just a siku. It's not a siku njema anymore.
Yeah.
Because we have lost him. I did read Ken Walibora in high school, a brilliant writer, for this reason.
Yeah.
Kiswahili was hard for many people, including myself, because I have a very strong mother tongue influence when I speak in Swahili. But this is the one book that I read from cover to cover because he wrote it in such an accessible, interesting and enjoyable way. And he was a crusader for bringing Kiswahili to the people.
Absolutely.
And I think he succeeded in doing that. So it's a sad loss.
Absolutely. Okay, so we won't toss the star. We will honor it and keep it.
Yeah.
Same with the Standard.
Same with the Standard.
Yes. Yeah. It's Gado. You want to describe it?
So Gado has drawn a book with Ken Walibora at the top of it, and it's written Mtumwema, which is a really good play on his book Siku Njema. It says R.I.P. Ken Walibora, 1964 to 2020. So it's a good tribute as well.
It's a good tribute. I have a question for GK. Did you read Siku Njema in high school?
I await the answer also.
Stay tuned.
I think if she had her Swahili, it would have been much better. Or she'd be actually able to speak Swahili.
I will pick it up right after this.
No, you'll enjoy it. It's brilliant.
I will. So who do we give? Can we give Dula our winning cartoon with Trump?
I think
agree.
Dula's
and we'll honor the other two. So we're not tossing any cartoons today, but we have a winning cartoon from the Daily Nation.
Absolutely.
What is our final thought?
And now our final thought. It is inspired by the Arab Renaissance or Renaissance.
Or the Arab.
You know, I'm sitting next to a group of schools. So
the Arab Renaissance, also known in Arabic as Al-Nahda, which is Arabic for revival or rebirth.
Yeah.
The Arab Renaissance started in the last part of the 19th century, about the 1890s, and it was a homegrown, meaning that it was driven and articulated by Arabs themselves, a homegrown intellectual awakening, which called for Arab unity and autonomy in the final days of the Ottoman Empire. So one of the early results of the Arab Renaissance, or the biggest one, was the formation of the Arab Congress in 1913. So this was a group of people coming together from different Arab nations with the core principles of social cohesion and regional cooperation. So people often think that the Arab Renaissance began, or the idea of Pan-Arabism began with the Arab Spring of 2011 or with Nasser's Egypt of the 1950s, but it didn't. It actually began with these visionaries who came together to do the Arab make up the Arab Congress. I'll mention some of their names. The president was called Abdul Al-Hamid Al-Zarahi. Salim Al-Salam. Sheikh Ahmed Hassan Tabara, amongst others. Those were the visionaries and intellectuals that led this movement. Sadly, as powerful and as important as this Congress was, it didn't last. It was put together in 1913, and what happened the next year? The World War II broke out.
So one or two?
The World War I, sorry. The First World War. Broke out, so they were not able to continue trying to attain their intentions. So although that didn't happen, I think we can say that the Arab Renaissance of 1913 planted a lasting seed that brought about other thoughts of self-determination but by Arab states. Now down the road, down the timeline, to the 2010s, with the Arab Awakening came up, and some people call it the Arab Awakening, and others call it the
revolution.
No. The second Arab Renaissance, which I actually like better than the Arab Awakening, because the Arab Awakening implies that the Arabs were sleeping, which they were not. So this happened in the 2010s, popularly more known as the Arab Spring, with uprisings against authoritarian regimes, and also uprisings against the low standards of living. It began in Tunisia with the self-immolation of a street vendor. We've talked about it here before, Mohamed Bouazizi, and it spread across other Arabic nations, Libya, Egypt, Yemen, Syria, and Bahrain.
Fantastic.
Interesting. So it's interesting because the Renaissance, just like the ones we've talked about this week, brought out this huge literal arts movement as well, right? So in Egypt, it focused mostly on politics. In Syria, again, on culture. But it succeeded in altering the direction of Arabic literature. So for instance, there was an emergence of Arabic press, whereas it forced writers to abandon the very complex, traditional, ornate Arab style of writing that was really quite complex and not accessible to the masses. So instead, with the Renaissance, came a simpler and more direct style that would appeal to a wider public audience. And this shows the importance of media even up until now, as we'll see with the Arab Spring, for instance. And so with it also came, with the Renaissance that is, came the spread of modernization of education. And then, so like as DM mentioned, post-World War I, there's a partition of the Ottoman Empire by the European powers. There's this Arab nationalism that's supposed to take root. But then it becomes very radical, both politically and socially. And so it produced very little liberty and equality in that time in the Arab nations. Its heroes were military dictators such as Abdul Nasser.
You're right.
And so the appeal of Arab nationalism and pan-Arabism had been on the wane. It hadn't been doing well. And there was very little revolutionary virtues left from that Renaissance period before. So now what we have is what we saw in 2010, which was the Arab awakening, or the Arab, what did you call it? The second revival, the second Renaissance. But there's still issues. And the issues are that there's something that's stopping the Arab nations from transitioning into what it, its better self, what it wants to be. And what has made this difficult, some have said, is the alliance between wealth and political power, as well as between wealth and the media. So that those who are influential figures, even during these revolutions, continue to stay in power because they have the wealth and the power. And so they continue with the same methods even after the Arab Spring, for instance. And the biggest challenge that has been facing these Arab countries in transition, such as Yemen, Tunisia, Syria, Egypt and such, and Libya, is how to transform this security apparatus, the military, that has primarily been committed to defending regimes by instilling fear and using violence. So that there hasn't been a transition to what you see many democratic countries sort of working with.
Correct.
And then the important thing here that many have noticed is the role of young people. So the Arab world is disproportionately young. More than half the Arab population is actually under the age of 25. Yet a lot of government policies and regulations and things aren't working for the needs of these young people. So that's why you see the Arab Spring taking root, but also you see again the importance of a media. So in Egypt, in Tunisia and Egypt, you saw the use of social media to organize complex protests. They really mobilize that way. In contrast to somewhere like Libya that had no Facebook generation to organize these protests. And there we saw trace architects sort of come in and take Gaddafi out. So young people have a chance to use their youth and their roles to do a transition. However, at some point, the transitions are always hijacked. So you find in Tunisia, the revolution was hijacked by older opposition. In Egypt, many of the young people were actually accused of being traitors and were imprisoned thereafter. So they make some movement forward and then they're taken 10 steps back.
10 steps. Guys, I'm thinking, in my mind, this thing called the Arab nation, I believe it was well constructed, but in truth, those individual Arab states were very individualistic and probably had selfish interests amongst themselves. And why am I saying this? You see, there's an example of the Six-Day War, 1967, where Israel now had become a state in 1947. And there was a perception that Israel had occupied Palestine. Maybe it is actually true they had occupied Palestine. And the object of aggression had become Israel. Now, Six-Day War comes in, Syria, Egypt, and Lebanon. And Jordan, had, were pitted against Israel. Now, Israel kanyagas these fellows. Egypt loses an entire air force. Syria loses part of its land. Jordan gets beaten and loses its prestige. And they would have expected that Israel, all the Arab nations at that point would have taken the burden of Palestine and protected Palestine. Then 1973 comes, and that's when we now see selfishness entering the Arab nation. Egypt attacks Israel, 1973 Yom Kippur War, and they get back at what Israel did to them. Now, previously, Israel had occupied part of the Sinai, which was Egyptian land. Now, Egypt gets back its land and fights for it, and also goes all the way to sign a peace treaty with Israel, and goes ahead to also recognize Israel as a state, and also is seen to be an ally of America. What does this portend for the Arab nations? First, they look, inwardly amongst themselves and say, who is this who has betrayed the cause of the Arab nation? It is Egypt who had been leading the wars. But Egypt at the same time wanted to be a superpower and to have hegemony within the Arab world. Were they wrong in doing this? Absolutely not, because in politics, it's not just, there are no permanent friends, there are no permanent enemies. It's a game of common interests. And therefore, this thing called the Arab nation, and up to now, and also the Arab League, does not have much weight in the world, because they see themselves inwardly.
I think there was a lot of divide and rule in this case. Can you imagine a united Arab world?
Would be formidable.
Yes.
Formidable. Yeah. It really would.
Yes, and even look at Africa itself. We have a moribund thing called the AU that has probably 60%, 70% of its funding comes from the EU itself. And we are divided into Anglophone, Francophone, I don't know what other phones.
Interesting. So on a day where we had a winning cartoon from the Standard, but we honor the ones of Ken Walibora from the others, and a winning headline from the Star, I want to leave you with this. When is a revival needed? When carelessness and unconcern keep the people asleep. So may we always be alive and concerned to make the world and our lives a better place. Yesterday, we had a quarantine challenge. Yesterday's challenge was, a thief enters a shop and threatens the clerk, forcing him to open the safe. The clerk says, the code for the safe is different every day. And if you hurt me, you'll never get the code. But the thief manages to guess the code on his own. So how did he do it? So as we know, the code was different every day. The word different. And today's challenge, when I take 5 and add 6, I get 11. But when I take 6 and 7, I get 1. What am I? Drop your comments in our YouTube section and don't forget to subscribe. But also find us on TV. We're on GoTV, Time Free to Air, and StarTimes. Have a lovely